There is an evident problem of how music is classically taught. There is a staggering 80% dropout rate. Well, 10 years ago, we set off on a mission to find better teaching methodology in hopes of solving this issue. During our research, we noticed something of great value. What we noticed was a repeating pattern occurring through all music, no matter when in history it was created or the genre. What we discovered was that music is a fractal. I'm here today to explain and make clear this wonderful discovery. I will briefly explain what a fractal is and then show the advantages of learning music theory through this lens. A fractal is a pattern that is created as a result of one set of instructions repeating, or what's called iteration. Here is an example. At first glance, it's probably hard to see or even believe that this complex image could be created by just one set of instructions. But in fact, it is. The instructions are very simply go up and branch off in a V and repeat. Wherever you look in the pattern, everything that you are seeing can be defined by the same set of underlying instructions. So, since music is a fractal, then all music ever made or ever will be made, including all music theory, terms, and topics, is simply an iteration of one set of instructions, or what we are calling one unifying concept. The unifying concept that iterates to create all music is: music is the interplay of consonance and dissonance at every level. So let me explain briefly the terms. Let's start with consonance and dissonance. It's a lot easier to comprehend if I give you a real-life example. Let's imagine that you're at home and you feel content. Well, this would be an example of consonance. But after some arbitrary amount of time, you're naturally going to desire change. As nice as your home is, you're not going to want to stay home for the rest of your life. As this desire for change builds, tension builds. And this tension is an example of dissonance. So, as the tension builds, we have a choice to either let the tension build and build and build, or release it. Each choice producing two totally different outcomes. So you decide to go out for a walk. Now that simple change is enough to release the tension and restores your sense of consonance. You see, it's the way we play, or it's the interplay with consonance and dissonance that produces different outcomes. So all the minute decisions that we make every day, all day, illustrates that we already know how to compose. We compose our lives based on this concept. Music works the same way. But in order to create consonance and dissonance in music, we use music elements. Let's give you an example. Imagine you're peacefully sitting in silence. After some arbitrary amount of time, you're naturally going to desire change. As this desire for change builds, tension builds. So to release the tension, you decide to play a single note on your instrument. Now think of this image as a sliding scale, representing all the possible notes that you could play. When you play the single note, it is a simple change, but it is enough to release the tension and restore your sense of consonance. Now imagine playing that one note over and over and over. After some time, you will naturally desire change. So what can you do? Well, you can make change on two different levels. You can either change the note you're playing, or you can add another music element. Volume is a music element, and it is just how loud or how soft a note is played. This image represents the sliding scale of volumes. And here is the slider in the middle, representing an average volume, like my speaking voice. So now you're going to play the same note, but you're going to make a change to the volume. Again, that small change releases the tension and restores your sense of consonance. Now, let's play the same note with the same volume over and over and over. I'm sure you're starting to see the pattern. This will become dissonant. So what can you do? You can either make a change to any of the music elements, or we can add another one. So let's add one last element. Tempo. Well, tempo is just the pace at which I'm playing the note. This image represents the sliding scale of tempos. Here we see the slider is in the middle, representing an average tempo, like the pace of the words coming out of my mouth. So now, let's play the same note, the same volume, but you're going to speed up the tempo. Again, you made a small change, and you feel content. Well, at least for the moment. There are no formulas as to how much consonance and dissonance music or life should have. But one thing is for sure. If there was no interplay, music and life would be monotonous. So what we have here, what this simple diagram is showing us, is the blueprint of music. This is the architecture of music. This is the blueprint used to create all the music that has ever been or ever will be made. This diagram clearly shows us that all music is simply layers of music elements, each element having a range or sliding scale of consonance and dissonance for us to use to create and understand the endless variety in music. Okay, so let's use what we know to create two simple compositions and compare. We see that both compositions are going to use the same note, but the first composition has a low volume and a slow tempo versus the second composition that has a very high volume and an extremely fast tempo. It should be clear that we would get two completely different outcomes. They are different for one reason, and one reason only, because music is the interplay of consonance and dissonance at every level. Now, we have only discussed 3 elements today, but of course there are many more. But it should be clear that you don't need to know all the music elements before you can start expressing yourself musically, because music can be made with any number of elements. Another thing that this diagram shows us, which is truly fascinating, is that all music theory, all the terms and the topics can generally be one of two things. They're either describing a music element or describing how to play an element. For example, volume is an element. All the terms pertaining to volume will simply describe how soft or loud to play. Learning music theory through this lens might seem deceptively simple, yet there are a multitude of advantages. It's an innovative, new perspective, giving students an easily digestible, distilled down overview of not only how music works, but how everything is connected, facilitating students with a fresh, empowering grammar, enabling them to explore every new term or topic with confidence, all culminating in a learning path that is not arduous, but rather efficient and elegant. At first glance, it is hard to see or believe that music is a fractal. It took us 10 years to notice, but in fact, it is wherever you look in the pattern. Everything that you are seeing can be defined by the same set of underlying instructions, that music is the interplay of consonance and dissonance at every level. Thank you.